more specifically for this video, Warhammer 30K, because it's during the Horus Heresy. We're going to be talking about the Istvaan III Atrocity, or the betrayal at Istvaan III. So, for a more succinct overview, kind of summary lore video of it, you can check out the video I put up on my other channel, WH40K, which I'm not whispering, so it's technically not an ASMR, but I'm just talking in a normal voice. But yeah, I'll put a link in the description for that. But in these videos on this channel, I like going into more detail and talking about just extra facts and kind of talking about why I picked certain pictures and stuff, because I try and get ones that tie in directly for what I'm talking about at that point in the video. So, yeah, I always have a good time with these ones. The original video, making it is a lot of work, but I'm just kind of chilling and in a more relaxed way talking about all the stuff as we go through it now. But anyway, yeah, back. We're going through the betrayal at Istvaan III. So, I guess I can move us a little bit forward here, but I don't have to go too much. Yeah, this one's mainly just to show Horus, but that's what all the Primarchs during the Horus Heresy, getting pretty chaosy there. But this is actually the first real kind of thing that got the Horus Heresy going. You know, up until that, it's a lot of talk and trying to bring the Primarchs and stuff over to his side. Kind of very subtle, swaying people and forging alliances. But this will be the first actual, catalyst and step towards a full-blown civil war in the Horus Heresy. So it's before the drop site massacre on Istvaan V and stuff, and some of the other events that we talked about in other videos. But yeah, we have Horus here, and yeah, it's just the Emperor of Mankind. I was tying that in, saying that, I don't know, that he would be betraying the Emperor of Mankind, and there's Horus serving kind of as the War Master there, leading humanity on its great crusade. But here we go. Here's a map of the world of Istvaan III. It has some big cities there on it. And has some semi-interesting text about the planet and a warning that it's currently in a state of revolt. So yeah, he strategically picked this planet because there was I guess they don't really know about chaos at the time, but really a chaos insurrection on the planet. They would think that it was just a rebellion against the Emperor, but really a chaos cult had instigated this. But anyway, it had only been brought into compliance with the Empire. There was an existing faction there of humans, but they were conquered by the Imperium, by Primarch Korax, shown here, and his Raven Guard Legion. He has those cool storm claws he's known for there, and jetpack. Also, maybe it'll be less apparent in this one, but I hope the production quality is a little bit better. I tried to, edit pictures a little bit nicer. I have some different transition effects. I have the zooms to try and make it a little bit more dynamic. So, with me pausing so much, you might not notice it in this one, but you'll probably get the full effect if you watch the other video. So, I'm trying to incrementally get better as things go along. past, I think he was an Imperial Guard officer, and, he had a military service career behind him. He had a political career. He was part of the Ultima Segmentum Court as a politician. So yeah, they installed him, and then, he went about, tearing down temples and local things, their traditions and religions, and installing it with, things of imperial authority. The empire was, or the Imperium, was still guided by the imperial truth, and they were, they're all about science and matter-of-fact things, and Warhammer 30K, like, religion's not really a big of a thing. It starts growing during this period, and there begins to be a following of people that worship the Emperor, but, he doesn't like that. He's trying to put a stop to that, but that's really full swing into a super religion that dominates everything by Warhammer 40K time. But, so yeah, Vardis Brawl begins that process. He's building things up. He's tearing down the old society and trying to replace it and bring it into the Imperium. But then there is a warp storm that cuts off the planet from the rest of the Imperium, and there's no contact made for 6 years. And then this picture is giving it away a little bit, but not too much. But yeah, so then the warp storm kind of weakens and dissipates after 6 years, and then a passing patrol ship receives a weak transmission coming from the planet, and the transmission was dated 2 years prior already, but it indicated that there'd been a religious rebellion against the Emperor on the planet, and the Governor Prawl himself was leading it. So he was swayed by the cult that he was trying to destroy on the planet, and likely the effects of the warp storm itself. It really weakens the walls of between the warp, or the Immaterium, and the physical world. So all kind of crazy things happen. So probably not completely his fault. That's a bad situation to be in. But yeah, you have a chaos rebellion against the Empire now, and yeah, they still didn't really understand chaos at that point in time. That would obviously come later during the Horus Heresy. So yeah, they just saw it as a rebellion against the Imperium, and the War Master Horus is tasked in bringing this world back into compliance and crushing this rebellion. It's even more of an offense because it was the governor himself leading it, who is appointed and given his job with, charged by the Emperor and the court. So this is a pretty cool picture that I found that lays out all the Primarchs, all the homeworlds, all the original chapters. So it's pretty cool to look through here. And also the legion sizes. In like 40K, they're bumped down to only having 1,000 per legion, but there are more successor legions, so there's more of them, but still nowhere near this strength. Like you can see, they're ranging between 200,000 and 85,000, so there's a lot of them. And the sizes are for various reasons, like how many people are on their home world. Some like the Thousand Sons are known for having a lot less, and being kind of on the verge of with psychic energy, and they had, like, something that goes wrong with them due to their genetics and causes them to turn into chaos spawn, essentially, and lose control of themselves. But then that was brought back under control, and they were able to build up again. But I just find that interesting. That doesn't really have any relevance to this with Istvaan III. But I put this here because as War Master, Horus was able to, put, like a chessboard, put all the pieces in place to try and make this secret strike happen. And I guess I haven't explained exactly what the goal was of this that he is trying to do here, but it's probably a good time. So his ultimate goal was to cleanse from his point of view, not from an objective point of view, but he wanted to eliminate all of the elements in the initial main traitor Space Marine legions, of those that they suspected to be loyal to the Emperor, and they wouldn't, they were too loyal to side with Horus. So, they're seeking to cleanse them from the Emperor's children, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Sons of Horus. Some of the other ones that will ultimately be corrupted. Some of them were just not here for various reasons. Or run other things, like word bearers are definitely 100% corrupted already, and notably don't go through this original cleansing, along with some others, like Alpha Legion, who else? Night Lords, I think. Some other ones. But, anyway, so he's able to kind of maneuver things so he picks those four that I mentioned initially: Emperor's Children, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Sons of Horus, to get rid of the loyal elements in them and kind of bloody them. Because in like the books and stuff, they describe it like at Istvaan V with the drop site massacre. It was kind of a mental shock for the loyal ones to have fought side by side with these other chapters or legions for centuries, and then just be turning on their former allies. So we want them to be over that by the time that Istvaan V occurred. But we get into some specifics here. I had this on the screen for a little bit, so we'll just get through that. But he positions a lot of them very strategically. Like here we have go over 1 second. The Dark Angels. And this is just a cool shot of one of their like monastery type things. And their chapter is kind of like a secretive, kind of like Templar, Crusader, Paladin, Knight order originally. But we can go into detail on that some other time. But, so yeah, he sends the Dark Angels, the Blood Angels, which is a cool battle shot here, and the Ultramarines mustering here in this picture. He sends them, kind of gets them out of the picture because they're staunchly loyal to the Emperor. So he sends them to different sectors, different parts of the galaxy in dangerous crusades, just so they won't be available. And also some of the largest too. So he wanted them out of the picture, not able to respond. The White Scars were already off on a different... I think they're all fighting the orcs somewhere. I read in the book White Scars. It's pretty interesting. During the first part of the Horus Heresy, they're out of contact and then come back. And have to figure out what's going on and whose side to go with. Then you have the Imperial Fists here, who were called by the Emperor after the Emperor left the Great Crusade, after like the big meeting on Ullanor, I think it was called, and he brought them back to build defenses on Terra to make it into a real fortress world, which would definitely pay off later in the Horus Heresy. And then the Thousand Sons, who ultimately would join Chaos as well, and the Space Wolves were already in a battle by this point, the Battle of Prospero, which is probably worth a video of its own. It's very interesting. So I won't go into it in too much depth here, but if you watch my other video about the history of the whole Imperium, Magnus did something that kind of messed up the Emperor's plans and went directly against an order he gave to not practice certain types of, sorcery and psychery stuff, let's call it, dabbling in the warp too much, and then he does against that, and the Emperor sends the Space Wolves to destroy that legion. So, a brief summary of that. So those guys are out of the picture. Yeah, and the other ones are just off doing other stuff and not really worried about just yet, but most of them will come back and be relevant in Istvaan V. So, that brings us to crushing the rebellion on Istvaan III. So this was to be a coordinated, mostly drop pod assault on the planet, on specifically the capital hive city of Kirvanak. It's also called the Coral City. So yeah, they didn't have, there were some tanks and some vehicles, but pretty limited support other than it had a few Titans, which is definitely very powerful, but mostly an infantry assault just to kind of dispose of just the loyal Space Marines, and even in sending them against this rebellious city that really shouldn't stand too much of a threat in theory against the Space Marines. They want to kind of ensure that they suffered losses already, even just taking it as much as they could. So we have a cool video here of some drop pods going down, plunging through the atmosphere to land in the city. That was from the game Fire Warrior, which definitely a cool game. I'm gonna have to play that again. I did pick it up on GOG a while back. But anyway. Alright, so here we can go over the mission here. And I did a little bit of video editing magic and picture editing magic to kind of focus different things on this picture. So it was a little bit of effort, but I think it turned out pretty cool. So here we have the map of the Coral City. And yeah, we can see the different icons for different Space Marine legions and things. So here we go. That was the effect I was talking about. I just blurred the thing things in the background so I could focus on them. So, we have drop pods going down all around the city, but each chapter has specific primary objectives. So here we are looking at the Emperor's Children are, which is this icon right here. Yeah, you can see my cursor. Okay. Yeah, right there. And they're dropping down onto the Precentor's Palace, which is the city's main seat of government and where they believed that Vardis Brawl, the former planetary governor and now leader of the rebellion, would be. It's a pretty reasonable guess, I assume. It's a big Imperial built palace and slash fortress. So it's like a dominating fortress palace, just to kind of be awe-inspiring and also intimidate the local populace. So the Emperor's Children, that is, are doing strategic drops all along the entryways to this building with their primary objective of capturing and or killing Vardis Brawl. And we'll transition here over into the next one in a second, I believe. There we go. Okay, next up is the World Eaters, which are these, the circles with the teeth, and commonly in their full logo has a world being devoured by those teeth. And the World Eaters' objective here was, you have your major highways running through a lot of these critical roads, and also some just garrisons of troops and stuff, but they needed to sever the main transportation arteries or highways and stuff through the city. Because you have like the objectives down here, but everything kind of runs through these main roads over here. So that falls on the World Eaters. So let's move on to our next one. You also have some drops of Sons of Horus there, but over on this side you have like the city's main like walls over here, some towers and forts and things, and they had some trench lines out in front of it all throughout here, so very fortified area of the city. And that falls to the Death Eaters, which are these logos, and this is the Legio Mortis Titan Legion, so they had some Titan support there, and they were trying to take the walls and root out all of the strongholds of the defenders of the city. And our last target here is the Sons of Horus. Their objective is to capture Siren Hold, which is an ancient kind of temple complex, which was the base of operations for that chaos cult on the planet. And more specifically, they had some like special chaos psychers that were called the War Singers. And they were the ones that had existed on the planet before compliance and had probably been empowered by the warp storm and led to this rebellion in the first place. They are cultists of the chaos god Slanesh, which is like the prince of pleasure and pain and overindulgence and excess and things, sensory excess. So they probably looked pretty weird based on how those usually look. There's not really any pictures specifically of the war singers. But yeah, that was the main objectives. We go more of the drop pod assault, and the drop pod assault was kind of hindered in some cases because they were intentionally given some inaccurate drop coordinates, so some squads were cut off or took longer to reinforce others, so kind of hindered in that way. And yeah, all of these going down are, usually you send in whole squads and have certain orders of like which ones you send in first, but this was definitely an oddity and probably raised some eyebrows of how they just cherry-picked people they thought were loyal and kind of put them all on this mission. But, yeah, the enemy resistance was definitely more than they expected, because a lot of them were Imperial Guard regiments that were stationed there that were now cultists. Stuff like this dude in Imperial gear using Imperial laser guns, or las guns. I just say laser because like it's short for laser, but it's probably pronounced differently, who knows. But yeah, they were better armed, a little bit better trained, but kind of crazy cultists now, I guess. They also still had some things from the garrison, what the Imperial Guard was equipped with. So they have some artillery, they have mortars, they have tanks. Got some burned out tanks here. So, more than they were expecting based on the intel they provided to the loyalist elements. So they were in for a tough fight definitely on the Death Guard front. The battle was also intensifying around the Siren Hold. We got the Sons of Horus here attacking, and the Chaos Cultists were rallied by the Istvanian war singers I mentioned earlier. They were emboldening their troops, rallying them up, and were fearsome psychers in their own right. This isn't probably, they could like do other stuff, so I'm not sure exactly how they looked, but this is a Slaanesh cultist. As I said before, they're of kind of pleasure and excess, so they're, if you look them up, there's not too many decent pictures, but they're generally kind of messed up looking and have skimpy clothing because of that. But we'll just move on to this so we don't have to look at it for too long. But that was the most decent representation I could get. But yeah, they were powerful psychers in their own right. They could use their psychic ability to fly, create protective shields, and scream with enough force to shatter the Space Marine ceramite armor. So, and there's been some other instances of like sound weapons being used to throughout Warhammer 40K by different aliens and cultists and things. And even I think there's like noise Chaos Space Marines that use sound cannons. I think that's a common one for Slaanesh actually for some reason. I guess it's just like goes along with the excess, the sensory overload. But yeah, there was tough fighting here. Here's the it's not really, I think it's like the Blood Ravens or something probably, but we can just pretend, I don't know, that it's the Emperor's, no, the Sons of Horus breaching into a temple complex, fighting their way in, deep down into the heart of a chaos shrine, defeating all of the war singers. And deep at the heart Slaanesh. That would later be referred to as Death's Doom. And on the planet, the Sons of Horus were led by Captain Garviel Logan, which is a super interesting character. If you read I think it's the first couple books in the Horus Heresy, he is the protagonist of those. I forget what those are called off the top of my head right now. Wait, I think I can. That's not the right ones. I forget what's one. One might be like Horus Rising or something. But those are good books. Alright. Moving on to our next Legion here, I think. Well, just some more pictures of Chaos Cultists. There's surprisingly not too much artwork specifically about them, but I managed to find some cool ones. Alright, so over to the World Eaters. They initially, their target went pretty well. You know, they just landed on, the highways and markets and on the interior of the city. So, they were able to crush the defenders there without too much opposition. But then, a psychic scream just rippled through the city and drove its inhabitants and the remaining defenders into just a berserk, overwhelming rage. And in just a swarm of people, the World Eaters were pushed back and kind of pushed back on the defensive, fighting in super close combat against like a wall of zombies. Maybe like War Z or something style here. And these look like some kind of like police force type people here on top of a vehicle, but just pretend those are Space Marines up there. And that was kind of what they were dealing with, just a wall of super berserk people just fighting with whatever they had. Just World Eaters running out of ammo and being forced back. Again, things getting a little bit more frantic, but and then we're coming to the Emperor's Children landing at the Precentor's Palace. So they, the Emperor's Children are all about perfection and trying to do everything to the best of their abilities. So they were actually able to pull off some pretty precise landings on multiple layers around all the entrances to the Precentor's Palace. And then additionally, on top of the roof, they landed some people with heavy meltas and lasers and some dreadnoughts and things were able to tunnel down from the roof into the Precentor's Palace. And from there, they had an intense fight on their hand as they fought through many cultists and even some elite soldiers wearing heavier armor that were surgically modified and using different types of weapons, shooting sound, like they had guns shooting sound like we mentioned earlier, and also shooting razor sharp darts of liquid metal that could burn through armor. So using some unusual weapons that are both pretty suspiciously effective against Space Marine armor. So I think they definitely wanted this fight to be as tough as they could on the Loyalists. So they fought their way up through the Precentor's Palace and eventually reached the throne room, where they found Vardis Prawl himself. That is not him, but in the lore he's so this was the only picture I found that looked kind of reasonable for an Imperial governor or something on a throne. But he's probably kind of chaos culty looking by this point. But the Emperor's children are being led by Captain Lucius. Lucius the swordsman. This is kind of a very artistic, fanciful drawing of them. But he is an Emperor's children. They are kind of over the top. But at his maximum good boy loyal stage, maybe he looks something like this. Although I thought he had some hair on him, but yeah, he's a dual wielding swordsman. So he engaged with Vardis Sprawl and ultimately defeated him and severed his head. And with Vardis Sprawl defeated, at that point the psychic scream emanating throughout the city ended, and the Loyalists were able to defeat the remaining defenders of the city. But they couldn't celebrate for very long, because right after the fleet ceased all communication with the surface, the ships moved into orbit and then would open fire with a massive orbital bombardment with their cannons loaded with shells containing the Life Eater virus. And before they did this, some of the support stuff and like dropships and whatnot, and the Titan legions, which by this point are really part of the Dark Mechanicum working for Horus, but they pull back to a safe distance outside of the city. And so they virus bomb the planet, which wipes out everything still on the surface. And Life Eater virus just works super quick. Just any organic matter and stuff that it finds, it just kind of liquefies immediately, and then makes a big toxic cloud out of all the vaporized organic material, we'll just say. And then that is ignited by a lance strike, a laser beam from the ships in orbit. But going back a little bit, not everyone dies, because before this orbital bombardment occurs, some loyalist elements in the fleet, I guess they weren't heavily suspected enough to be sent down to the planet, but were still actually loyal to the Emperor. Yeah, I guess they didn't, their list wasn't completely accurate for who was loyal and who wasn't. But one of the people that finds out is Captain Garo of what legion is he from? Death Guard, that's right. So Battle Captain Nathaniel Garo of the Death Guard commandeers the ship the Eisenstein, which is a heavy frigate, and broadcasts a warning before he's able to and you know, this guy, maybe you've heard of the flight of the Eisenstein, but he goes through some crazy stuff, but with a goal of escaping and getting back to warn the Emperor of Horus's betrayal. But he's able to kind of subtly get away from the rest of the fleet, drop back, and then warp out and escape with the Eisenstein. But there's a lot to talk about with that. So, and he effectively gets out of this engagement. So, his children. So he takes it one step further. He steals a Thunderhawk gunship and flies down to the surface in time to, kind of break the, the interference, the radio silence, are kind of blocking transmissions to and from the planet. So he goes down there, warns them in person, tells them to, what's coming with the attack, and to get into bunkers, trying to get underground into some of the temple complexes or airtight bunkers, especially, that they had just taken from the Istvanians. And he's actually able to warn quite a bit of them, but the ones he's not, here's a rendition of the Life Eater virus just melting through helmets and gear and equipment, even the Space Marine armor. The Space Marines they're usually pretty sealed in there, like they go into space, or normal poisons don't stop them. They have like filtration systems and stuff, but even this one it's so caustic that it melts through things and gets at you anyway. So, some of them are able, due to his warning, to get in and escape this fate. Let's see, how much longer are we on this picture? Probably not too much longer. And then there are a few more ships. I won't go into exact details, but if you read some of the books or just go on the wiki pages, there's a lot of detail about even just the minor actions of random captains and things during this battle. There's a lot of lore to unpack and read, which is super interesting. But there are at least a couple more ships that their captain and their crews are still loyal, and they try to prevent the bombardment, but they're vastly outnumbered, so they manage to damage or take out a few ships, but are ultimately destroyed as well. And only the Eisenstein is the only ship of loyalists to make it out. There are still some pockets on certain ships of suspected loyalist Marines and Imperial Guard regiments that were assigned to each legion, and those are ambushed on ships as well. So there's some frantic fights within the fleet above as well. All of them being ultimately killed, but some of them putting up a good stand as best they could, or pulling back into the depths of the ships and doing some sabotage and stuff before eventually being found. There we have, so that's kind of what's left on the surface afterwards, but the Space Marines eventually emerge once it's safe to do so, once the virus has been gone away and the fire has died down from the firestorm. They emerge back on the surface, and they're kind of shocked and confused and angry at this betrayal, and they're trying to hail the fleet and demand answers for what happened. But kind of astonishingly, after what they had just gone through, but thanks to the warning of those two people of Garo, and especially Saul Darvitz, nearly 2/3 of that original 100,000 made it through and survived the bombardment. So Angron, seen here, the Primarch of the World Eaters, he heard the transmissions coming from the surface and saw that they had survived the trap that they had laid for him, and impulsively headed down to the surface with 50 companies to try and finish off the Loyalists himself in hand-to-hand combat. So, Horus's impulsiveness here actually shoots Horus in the foot. Horus was, it probably wasn't the original plan, but his follow-up plan, once he had learned that there were survivors, was going to just be, more rounds of orbital bombardment so that they didn't lose any more men. But with Angron already heading down to the surface and landing, kind of put him in a lose-lose situation. Because, what could he do? He could do another orbital bombardment, just be done with it, blow up everyone, but either lose Angron or piss off Angron, which could possibly even be worse. Just have him, you lose him as an ally, but it's worse having him come back and having a pissed off Angron. So, Horus was kind of forced to just commit everyone to this and send, the atmosphere was still kind of rough, so they couldn't deploy additional Titan legions or lots of support vehicles. But they did more drop pods assault initially and got some vehicles down, but committed every legion to this second assault. And here we see a pretty cool shot dropping in. But the loyal world eaters, kind of an impulsive bunch like their Primarch, they were super pissed at him, and they kind of rushed out to meet their former brothers and their Primarch and engaged in the first of the fighting. And there's a lot of heavy fighting. They prefer to get up close and personal, but being outnumbered and facing their Primarch, they were ultimately taken down, and most of the world eaters are killed pretty early on in this phase. Because Angron is a pretty unstoppable force. After taking out those world eaters that had rushed out to fight their enemy head on early in the battle, I think it's mainly Emperor's children that land to try and retake the Precentor's palace, which the Loyalists had reoccupied. They had gotten into bunkers and stuff pretty much where their objectives were. So the World Eaters were kind of like more out in the open and kind of took the brunt of the orbital bombardment, because there wasn't as much places that they could get to where they were deployed. But you still have the Loyalist Emperor's children in the Precentor's palace, the Sons of Horus in the Siren Hold, and the Death Guard, in those trenches and walls and bunkers that they had taken. So the traitors tried to assault the Precentor's palace and assume that they'd be in disarray and wouldn't be able to muster as much of a defense, but they were pretty wrong, and they were already pretty dug in and using the Precentor's palace, which was already meant to shrug off some orbital bombardments and ground assaults. They'd created some barricades and that were pretty dug in, so they were able to resist that assault and many after it. But they were, their main holdouts were definitely the Precentor's Palace and Siren's Hold, and for a while the trench lines and bunkers, but throughout the city they engaged in guerrilla tactics and ambush ambushes and fighting to the best of their ability, making use of the terrain in the shattered city. But here is, I think, Captain Garfio Logan. Yeah, that's him. I think there's a tip of a Luna Wolf ear over here. But Logan, there's another shot of him who I mentioned earlier. Both him and Saul Darvitz they become the leaders and unifying force for the Loyalists during all of this. With, I guess, Darvitz in the Presenter's Palace and Logan in Siren's Hold, so they're both with their own chapters. The Sons of Horus, betrayed by their own Primarch and War Master, forsake the name Sons of Horus and go back to their original name from before Horus was made War Master, which is the Luna Wolves. So they adopt that name again in iconography. And that is what the Luna Wolves look like. I think that's actually from one of the book covers. Here's just a cool shot of, there's Emperor's children, but they're holding a Sons of Horus flag. It looks like they destroyed a Sons of Horus trader tank, and there's some blown up Space Marines all around. So the fighting was crazy and heavy and hectic all throughout the city. The Death Guard were the next to be targeted very heavily, and they were hit by a pincer attack. So Mortarion and the Traitor Death Guard landed outside the city and were attacking from the outside, assisted by the Titan Legions, which were coming back, and Angron and the World Eaters that had landed inside the city. So they were under attack from both sides, stuck in the middle. And, they put up a staunch defense, but were eventually overrun and enclosed in a pincer, and not many made it out to rejoin the other legions at the other two strongholds. But yeah, the city is a mess right now. So on fire, burned out husk, with war going on all through it, with hundreds of thousands of Space Marines. It's crazy. They're hunted. Once the Death Guard is defeated, the Titans enter the city and begin assisting in the hunt down of Loyalist forces, and they begin getting pushed back to the Siren Hold and the Presenter's Palace. The gates of the Presenter's Palace would then be destroyed by the volcano cannons on some of the Legio Mortis Titans. They could take some bombardment, orbital bombardment, and ground assault, but those Titan armaments punched through it. So the Presenter's Palace was already under siege, but they were still putting up a fight. And it is at this time that Lucius, Captain Lucius of the Emperor's Children, who had previously, I guess he was suspected of loyalty. I'm not sure why they would. Nothing from reading the books, like the book Fulgrim, really screams super loyal, and he seems already pretty kind of insane. His whole thing was like striving to be the best swordsman ever, and it's pretty eccentric. But he contacts the traitor legions and makes a deal that they would accept him back if Presenter's Palace for them, and also either kill or capture Saul Darvitz if he could. But yeah, I showed you like the super good boy version of Lucius when he was a loyal Marine, but really before this battle, he had already gone kind of insane as his chapter was descending into madness, but there's more of a story behind it, but I guess I won't get into it too much here, but, well, I don't know if there'd be a better part, but, I don't know, he meets some, like, artist chick, and she's kind of getting obsessed with chaos stuff, too, but he, like, cuts all these weird lines and patterns into his face with, like, broken glass. It's kind of messed up, so I'm not sure why looking at him they were like, yeah, he looks like a loyal emperor guy. So anyway, they agree to that plan to let him back. So he attacks some of the loyal space marines to open up a way into the Presenter's Palace for the traitor forces. And he kind of tricks Solomon Demeter here, which is another, I think, captain as well. But another Emperor's Children guy who is there. Yeah, I guess he's another captain of another, unit of them. But Solomon Demeter here. That's in one of the books too at the end, which kind of stinks because it's through his point of view too, and he just kind of stumbles upon, he's like, here's fighting, like, in the interior of the Presenter's Palace, and he's like, oh, if the traitors breached this far, and he like rushes in and he just sees Lucius fighting some other Emperor's children. He doesn't really know who they are, at this point the traitor ones don't look really any different at all than the loyalist ones, so you can't tell them apart. And he knew Lucius, so he was like, oh, well, Lucius is one of the leaders here, so he must be fighting some traitors, and he aids him, takes out the remaining guys that he was fighting with him. They take out 30 other loyal space marines, and then Lucius turns on him and betrays him, and it's kind of sad in the end. Demeter here is, he has that revelation that, oh crap, I just killed other loyalists, and Lucius is the evil one here. But yeah, Lucius kills him, and then engages Saul Darvitz, whom, over the course of this, as he kind of had grown to resent Saul Darvitz. Also, Darvitz has a really unique, cool-looking blade, doesn't he? That's a really cool shape. But he engages him in one-on-one combat, and Darvitz actually wins, and Lucius retreats and gets away, but the Emperor's Children traitors do take him back, and as far as we're concerned here, I guess we don't need to go too much more into the lore of Lucius, but he does pop up a bunch more times here and there in the books and in the lore in general. But this was a tiny victory for the Loyalists, just this, Saul Darvitz winning, but the Presenter's Palace is ultimately breached and conquered, and the Loyalists are defeated there. Next is Siren's Hold comes under attack, and they're surrounded as well, and each chapter was mostly kind of cleaning up after its own loyalists. So here we have the traitor Sons of Horus attacking the Luna Wolves, and they're eventually driven back and defeated as well, and this culminates in a battle that we can see here of Abaddon, which is Horus's right-hand man, his right-hand man, and he's fighting survives it. But that's what he does after isn't super relevant for what we're talking about now, but he actually does live through this, and I guess a small number of loyalists actually do live through these events here. But with that, with all of the strongholds taken from the loyalists and them all driven out, that's really the end of their resistance. You know, they're kind of hunted down through the streets a little bit more, and then it ends with Horus pulling back what troops he had, like everything from the surface, and then giving it another round of orbital bombardment, where he pretty much just flattens the entire city, which that's what he would have done if, in the first place, if Angron hadn't flown down. But yeah, here we just have a picture of the destruction. This is actually of the drop site massacre, but I'm assuming that it probably looked pretty similar afterwards, which is Space Marine versus Space Marine battle with just on a massive scale that, I don't know, you probably don't see too many other battles on this scale. Maybe a couple more, a few more in the Horus Heresy, but after that in Warhammer 40K you won't ever see this many Space Marines fighting other Space Marines, just because, you know, there aren't that many after this point. There's not that many Chaos ones left afterwards, and the Empire intentionally limits its legions to 1,000 after this point. You don't have, 200,000 in one legion. But, the Loyalists were defeated here, so technically it's a victory for Horus, but it's definitely a Pyrrhic victory, so it's a victory at such cost that it's barely a victory at that point, because not only did he lose a lot of his forces, way more than he was expecting in his ideal situation, he would have lost nobody, but so lost a lot more. It took invaluable time away from him at this early stage in the Horus Heresy, and the Eisenstein escaped and would ultimately warn the Emperor, which, Horus did kind of spin that to his advantage, because that led to the Istvaan V drop site massacre. But, he wasn't planning on revealing his hand so early, if he could help it. So, a lot of, and also, I didn't mention the time frame on this. They actually held out for 3 months of fighting on the surface. That's how long it took. So it wasn't just like over in a day or two. They put up a strong fight. When you get, like, what would they have? I don't know, you get like 66,000 Space Marines fighting on the surface. They put up a fight. So, but yeah, this was just a really interesting, cool battle that, if you don't read the books or you only focus on things in Warhammer 40K, you may not have heard about or known all the details. But yeah, this was actually a long lore video. I think this might be the longest. Maybe the history of the Empire was longer, I don't remember, or comparable. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was worth the wait. Let me know with a like or a comment on this video.